Good morning and welcome back to Football Morning Show. Masih bersama gue Hanif Thamrin yang tetap setia menemani aktivitas pagi kalian setiap jam 7 pagi my friends. Tentunya di hari Rabu pagi yang sangat nice dream ini, kita akan sapa-sapa dulu komunitas my friends yang sudah bergabung di kolom komentar di episode kemarin dengan berbagai macam profesi unik. Tentunya antara lain ada pekerja migran di Taiwan, pekerja migran. Oke. Operator ruang kontrol pabrik pupuk. Gila, bro. Benar-benar sungguh begitu berbagai macam ya ternyata profesi para my friends ini. Dan juga ada sopir pribadi tentunya yang selalu kita temani dalam perjalanan dinasnya dia ya. Dan kawan-kawan, ini sudah 4 minggu lagi menuju FIFA World Cup 2026. Mari kita rayakan dengan belanja Rexona X FIFA Limited Editions di toko kesayangan kalian ya. Dan ikutan berburu stars bersama Rexona. Caranya gampang, kalian tinggal beli produk Rexona apa saja. Dan jangan lupa untuk disimpan struk pembeliannya. Kalian foto atau kalau kalian belanja online jangan lupa di screenshots. Lalu kalian upload struk pembelanjaan kalian ke WhatsApp Rexona yang ada di kiri bawah layar kalian. Dan kumpulkan star sebanyak-banyaknya untuk ditukarkan dengan hadiah-hadiah menarik yang sudah disiapkan oleh Rexona, di mana periode ini berlaku dari tanggal 1 Mei hingga 31 Juli 2026. Tentunya Rexona adalah deodoran pertama yang memiliki teknologi amino aktif, memberikan 3 kali proteksi lebih tinggi untuk melawan keringat dan bau badan. Dan berkat Rexona, tentunya Football Morning Show bisa kalian saksikan secara gratis setiap hari Senin sampai Jumat setiap jam 7 pagi. Oke kawan-kawan, hari ini adalah edisi khusus recap transfer. Kita juga akan ada bintang tamu tentunya hari ini, khusus jurnalis khusus transfer Ben Jacobs dari BBC. Dan sebelum kita telepon Ben, kita akan recap dulu beberapa transfer yang datang, tentunya bukan dari Inggris ya, dimana tentu Inggris adalah bread and butternya Ben Jacobs. Tapi kalau Spanyol kita bahas dulu sedikit. Oke, kita mulai dulu tentunya kawan-kawan dari sebuah breaking news yang terjadi di Spanyol, di mana itu ada juga kemunculan dari PSG dalam perburuan tanda tangan Julian Alvarez. Ya, ini sebuah revelation disampaikan oleh Gaston Edul setelah tentunya sebelumnya ini dikait-kaitkan Julian Alvarez ke Arsenal dan juga Barcelona. Dan kini PSG diprediksi masuk dalam perburuan tanda tangan sang pemain. Menurut jurnalis Argentina Gaston Edul di akun Twitternya dia ya, PSG kini ikut dalam perburuan dan membuat langkah konkret untuk merekrut Julian Alvarez pada musim panas. Kita lihat dulu statement dari Gaston Edul. Ini adalah jurnalis asal Argentina. Dia bilang PSG menginginkan Julian Alvarez. Dia adalah pemain impian Paris sejak masih di Manchester City. Di bursa transfer ini mereka akan kembali membuat upaya serius untuk bisa mendapatkannya. Memang setelah hengkang dari City, salah satu destinasi dan klub yang begitu kuat meminati jasa Julian Alvarez itu adalah PSG. Namun sang pemain lebih memilih untuk bergabung ke Atletico Madrid. Namun tentu manuver ini cukup make sense teman-teman. Kenapa? Karena kalau kalian breakdown ya, beberapa penyerang dengan intensitas atau jumlah pressing tertinggi di Eropa, salah satunya adalah Julian Alvarez. Di episode-episode kemarin juga gue udah liatin ya grafisnya. Gila edan bro. Julian Alvarez kerja kerasnya tentu selain finishing, dia juga jago free kick. Jadi ini pemain yang komplit untuk skema dari Luis Enrique yang memang sangat mengedepankan sistem kolektif. Dan tentu ini adalah menjadi sosok striker sempurna untuk skema Luis Enrique. Dengan begitu Dembele bisa digeser ke kanan gitu atau ke kiri. Jadi ini lebih fleksibel nih ya. Jadi Kvaratskhelia bisa di kiri, Dembele di kanan, dan Julian Alvarez di tengah. Atau Dembele yang di tengah, Desire Doué nanti yang ada di kanan. Ini udah merem aja udah nih lini depannya PSG ya. Dan tukang pressing semua guys gitu. Dan definitely kalau ini terjadi, karena PSG juga memiliki kemampuan finansial yang luar biasa. Tidak hanya karena emang naturally mereka kaya, tapi kita harus ingat Musim kemarin mereka itu adalah defending champions Liga Champions, berarti kan uang hadiahnya paling tinggi. Musim ini pun uang hadiahnya nomor 2 setelah Arsenal, akan melebihi Arsenal kalau mereka menjuarai untuk kedua kalinya back to back. Begitupun dengan partisipasi mereka di FIFA Club World Cup sampai final juga. Jadi hadiahnya memang secara finansial itu masif sekali. Jadi membuat tentunya di luar dari dia adalah klub minyak kategorinya, dari performa di lapangan pun akhirnya membuat secara finansial PSG berada dalam posisi yang sangat-sangat kuat untuk bisa memberikan penawaran yang diinginkan oleh Atletico Madrid ya. Nah, berbeda nih dengan Barcelona. Nah, ini kawan-kawan. Ini kan harus berhemat gitu ya. Oleh karenanya ada manuver lagi yang coba dilakukan oleh Deco. Itu adalah ketimbang terus-menerus ya membujuk Manchester United untuk memberi diskon untuk transfernya Marcus Rashford. Sekarang upaya kreatif coba dikedepankan dengan membujuk Manchester United untuk meminjam Marcus Rashford 1 musim lagi. Itu dia guys ya. Nggak mau turun nggak apa-apa, aku pinjam lagi aja lah kawan, dia bilang gitu bro ya. Dan memang sebenarnya ini tentu membuat Man United berada dalam posisi terjepit karena Rashford itu sudah menentukan ya tambatan hatinya pengennya ke Barcelona, bahkan dia bersedia dipotong gajinya untuk bergabung secara permanen ke Barcelona. Dengan permainan ini tentu nanti United akan berada di situasi di mana sang pemain kembali tapi menolak destinasi yang lain, sehingga ujung-ujungnya ketika jendela udah mau ditutup kayak yang terakhir kali, dia pindahnya ke Barcelona juga dengan sistem peminjaman lagi. Nah, tentu dengan begini market value Marcus Rashford itu menjadi semakin menurun kawan-kawan. Dan kontraknya kan masih berlaku di Manchester United hingga 2028 ya. Otomatis kalau dipinjemin 1 musim lagi, dia akan berada di situasi di mana ketika kembali ke United nanti di akhir peminjaman, sisa kontraknya sisa 1 tahun dan United terekspos untuk bisa kehilangan secara gratis gitu ya. Jadi definitely ini menjadi sebuah problem yang harus diselesaikan oleh Jason Wilcox. Biasanya kalaupun dipinjemin lagi itu diperpanjang dulu kontraknya, jadi habisnya 2029. Nah itu jadi membuat Manchester United masih terproteksi lah, kurang lebih begitu kawan-kawan. Ya, kita lihat dulu bagaimana statement ini disampaikan oleh Fabrizio Romano terkait upaya Barcelona untuk kembali meminjam Marcus Rashford untuk kedua kalinya. Hansi Flick masih sangat puas dengan performa Rashford dan menginginkannya tetap berada dalam skuad. Barcelona ingin ada kesepakatan pinjaman 1 musim lagi, entah dengan opsi beli atau mandatori, kewajiban untuk membeli. Intinya Barcelona ingin mencari solusi kreatif. Di sisi lain United ingin Barcelona mengaktifkan opsi 30 juta itu sekarang juga. Ya itu disampaikan oleh Fabrizio Romano, 1 pengen kreatif, 1 pengen bayar aja udah, jangan diini-inin terus. Jangan terlalu diini-inin lah Barcelona. Tahu kita kau lagi kesulitan finansial, tapi jangan terlalu diini-inin lah ya gitu ya. Nah beda banget nih, sekarang kita akan coba bahas dulu kawan-kawan detail in-depth tentang update-update transfer yang akan terjadi di Premier League atau di Liga Inggris, tentunya bersama salah satu jurnalis transfer khusus ya. Ini jurusan, kalau ada penjurusan ini jurusan kuliahnya jurusan transfer ya. Inilah dia Ben Jacobs, tentunya kita akan coba telepon sekarang. Good morning from Jakarta, Ben. Pleased to have you on the show. How's it going?
Everything is good. It's my pleasure to be here, and hello to everyone in Jakarta.
Wow, lovely. So let's get into it. I just wanted to get you some feedback from your end in regards to the latest news that has been going around. One of the reason as well because you broke the news in the first place about how Chelsea approached Xabi Alonso. If we look at the structure, how Chelsea operate behind the scene right now with 2 sporting directors, and with the CV that Xabi Alonso have, just came from Real Madrid, one of the biggest club in the world. Would it be suitable with how, the dynamics between the 2 sporting directors and Xabi Alonso should he get appointed as a Chelsea head coach?
Yeah, I mean, Chelsea have got 5 sporting directors, but as you say, led by 2, Paul Winstanley and Lawrence Stewart. And this is very much a project. It's not necessarily going to change. The majority owner, Clearlake Capital, and Badad Eghbali will also remain heavily involved. So the new Chelsea manager will know exactly what he or she is walking into. And on the shortlist now are some more prominent names and others maybe that have fallen a little bit lower in Chelsea's thinking, which tells you that they're probably midway through their process at the moment. And the expectation is they'll make an appointment before the World Cup. Xabi Alonso, as I broke for TalkSport, and Andoni Iraola appear to be the 2 leading contenders, but the likes of Marco Silva, Oliver Glasner, Philip Luis and Cesc Fabregas have also been under consideration as well. And really, this is about Chelsea trying to show their pulling power at a relative low, because it's been a disappointing season. It could all change a little bit if they win the FA Cup and guarantee their place in the Europa League. But if they lose to Manchester City, the opposite extreme is a mid-table or bottom half finish without any European football. So you can understand why this process will be in many ways two-way, not just about Chelsea trying to get an elite coach, but also about the coaches they're speaking to, maybe interviewing Chelsea and putting scrutiny on their model and project as much as the owners, directors and sporting leadership asking questions to the coaches they want to hire. But make no mistake, Chelsea still has a lot of pulling power. With Xabi Alonso, he's open to the Premier League. At this stage, there's been no approach from Liverpool, which means that Chelsea is the only concrete possibility for Xabi Alonso as it stands. With Iraola, it's a little bit different because Crystal Palace have made an extremely lucrative offer and they're waiting to see whether Iraola decides to join them. And much like Xabi Alonso, he wants to stay in the Premier League. And then with candidates we can rule out, Jose Mourinho return, never been on the cards. He's on the cusp of joining Real Madrid. And another name that was linked quite heavily was Xavi Hernandez, the former Barcelona manager. And my understanding is that Chelsea do not have him on their shortlist and have ruled out making a move.
So after the bad experience and a bad spell with Liam Rosenior, the narrative from Chelsea fans, also from the board, is to appoint someone that has experience, predominantly like someone with a Premier League experience. Now that the Xabi Alonso suddenly becomes the front runners, slightly ahead of Andoni Iraola, what would be the thinking behind of the Chelsea management? Was it solely the glorious CV that Xabi Alonso has, or is it other aspects of his coaching methods?
Well, it's worth noting that a leading contender doesn't mean the leading contender. So Chelsea sources are adamant that they don't have a singular preferred candidate, but it's probably fair to say the 2 front runners are Xabi Alonso and Andoni Iraola. Yeah. And they're different in many ways. In Andoni Iraola, it's somebody with a lot of Premier League experience who's got the best out of a number of young players, but he would be moving from a model that has had to sell some of their stars to a club like Chelsea, notorious for poaching stars, and there would be a significant change in strategy and budget. But Andoni Iraola loves one thing, and that's to coach. And he's been happy in Bournemouth's project, even losing some names like Antoine Semenyo, because he trusts the recruitment team right up until leaving this summer to find replacements. And what a good endorsement for Bournemouth's model to see Antoine Semenyo leave mid-season and Ryan come in and have an absolutely superb second half of the season. And Iraola has allowed that model to function and managed a lot of young players within it and overcome various hurdles whilst focusing predominantly on coaching. And that's of appeal to Chelsea because they want these 5 sporting directors led by Paul Winstanley and Lawrence Stewart to be able to lead on the recruitment and almost protect the model against potential change over time and keep a clear identity and recruitment philosophy. And Iraola would certainly be willing to work within that. So that's the appeal with him. With Xabi Alonso, the point of difference is you've got somebody with Real Madrid on his CV. And it might seem like that's a strange thing to say because it didn't work out at Real Madrid. But by the same token, he's managed big players and egos. And let's not forget, he did the double with Leverkusen as well. And it's quite some feat to win a Bundesliga title when you have a rival in Bayern Munich that normally win that title in Germany for fun. So Xabi Alonso's reputation hasn't in any way been damaged by a difficult spell at Real Madrid. When he was at Leverkusen, he was one of the top coaching prospects in the country because he played for Liverpool. He's also aware of the Premier League and English culture as well. So these are the two strong candidates. They each have points of difference. And in the end, I think it's going to come down to two things. The first is, unlike Iriola, can Chelsea convince Xabi Alonso to take that job rather than wait and see if anything else comes up? Because, as I say, he's in demand. Yeah. And then number two, do they go for the more glamorous and glittering CV in a young coach they think can transition into Premier League management? Or do they maybe go for a slightly safer pair of hands because Iriola has already had success in England?
Yeah, that makes sense. Also, the same situations in managerial positions in Manchester United, where now that the Champions League safe in hands and Man United will come back to the Champions League, which comes down with another such a big income from the Champions League money. Michael Carrick has done the job. And he's given the target to bring the club within the Champions League zone, which is he has done particularly well. But the announcement hasn't arrived yet. Do you think there'll still be, some sort of like a twist later on? Or will the Man United board stick to the safe options and hand the job to Michael Carrick?
Michael Carrick is a strong option, there's no denying it, but Manchester United sources have always said they'll run a full process. And that's the difference between just handing it to Carrick off the back of Champions League football versus speaking to other candidates. And you arguably don't do a thorough process unless you hold multiple interviews, and Michael Carrick knows that. So there's still the formal part of this process to come. And although Michael Carrick couldn't have done much more, he hasn't had Champions League football. He hasn't had to balance European football with the Premier League. And there was always going to be an uptick in form off the back of Ruben Amorim because there was a change in system. There was the return to the starting lineup of Kobbie Mainoo. Several players felt more relaxed working under someone they respected as a player and has this so-called Manchester United DNA. So Manchester United have to dispassionately decide now whether that's enough to give Michael Carrick the job permanently. And then things could move very quickly and it would lead to a smooth transition, or if they prefer to also speak to other candidates. Andoni Iriola was approached, but at the moment Manchester United are not moving forwards there. And the other thing that helps Carrick is some of the candidates Manchester United would love to speak to are simply not available, or you have the World Cup and they can't start until very late in the summer. So Julian Nagelsmann is open to a job in club football, but he is contracted to Germany after this World Cup, and there's been no formal approach at the time we're recording this. Thomas Tuchel would have been a leading candidate, but signed a new deal with England. Carlo Ancelotti was briefly discussed, but committed himself further to Brazil on a contract until 2030. And Luis Enrique, naturally, like every club in world football, is another name that Manchester United love and appreciate, but he's also not available because the expectation is that he'll sign a new deal at PSG, keeping him at the club until 2030. So then you're left with Premier League contenders such as Oliver Glasner, Marco Silva, Andoni Iriola. And this is where maybe at the moment Manchester United feel Carrick is better positioned compared to some of those profiles, in part because he's got the momentum already to take Manchester United into next season. So nothing is decided yet, but certainly Carrick has been encouraged by the fact that as of now, Manchester United haven't made any formal approaches to any other candidates. But the reason why he won't just be given the job immediately immediately is because in the gap between now and the World Cup, Manchester United are still expected, regardless of whether Carrick gets the job or not, to speak to some other names, because if they don't, then quite simply, they won't have carried out a thorough process.
Yeah, it's interesting when you mentioned the thorough process. We know that at Manchester United, they have Christopher Fievel, which very experienced in German football, and one of the candidates that has been considered as well and currently participating coaching Germany in the World Cup is Julian Nagelsmann, which has a some sort of like progressive brand of football. If I'm not mistaken, you've also mentioned during your interview with the United Stand that there is some sort of like concern in regards to the manner of Julian Nagelsmann leaving Bayern at the time, and it becomes some like considerations from future potential clubs to reach out to him and consider him as maybe like a head coach. Can you elaborate on that, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Julian Nagelsmann is contracted until beyond this World Cup. But as I say, for the right job, he might be persuaded after this tournament to return to club football. And then we know from his CV that Julian Nagelsmann has been part of plenty of projects. So it's not that he can't fit within a model. It's the manner of how he handled his time at Bayern, coupled with the fact that he's jumped between a few clubs. And as a young manager, you have to do your due diligence. It's not a criticism against Nagelsmann. I think sometimes when we say something isn't a fit, people assume that the club is put off a manager. But it may just be that strategically or philosophically, they've got professional points of difference. And Nagelsmann divides opinion. He's a maverick. He's a fantastic coach. He likes to get involved in recruitment, and he's a very forthright personality. And as a consequence, he wants to do things his way. And the reason why, when I've done previous interviews, I compared him to Ruben Amorim was not in terms of their style or philosophy or CVs, but the fact that Amorim was empowered to come in mid-season and shake up Manchester United, change the culture at Carrington, get rid of some players from the first team squad, the likes of Marcus Rashford, who went to Barcelona, of course, who had no real way back, Jadon Sancho, who has ended up at Aston Villa and again is not expected back. And Amorim was empowered to make some of these decisions. Even for sagas and players that predated him, he was able to say, okay, this is the direction of travel. These players, some of them were already not part of Manchester United's plans, are not coming back. Others were still there, and Amorim got to take the decision which ones would stay and which ones would go. Even Kobbie Mainoo is a good example, because there were plenty at Manchester United that were equally as surprised by his lack of starts in first team football. But Amorim, again, as you would expect, I guess, from most managers at big clubs, was empowered to do things his way. And that was definitely the same at Sporting. And the comparison with Nagelsmann is not really overlapping their CVs or strategies or even styles. It's just to say that Julian Nagelsmann wants to come into a club and have that autonomy at the training ground and be able to define the culture in a very rigid way. And some clubs like that, and it's particularly effective, I think, when you're in a cup tournament or an international tournament, in his current role at Germany. But the challenge at big clubs sometimes is when you do things in such a forthright way, you need full buy-in. Otherwise, you have to handle disagreements and egos. And throughout the season at Real Madrid, we've probably seen the same thing as well. So you can make two arguments. One, to manage Manchester United, you need that kind of personality. Or two, managing Manchester United and having that kind of personality will put you in a very difficult position if things don't go right. And that was definitely the case with Ruben Amorim. So Manchester United have done their due diligence on Julian Nagelsmann, and obviously Christopher Vivell, as you say, is very well positioned to advise on that. They appreciate him as a coach, but things haven't got to the point of formally approaching or interviewing him. And maybe that's an indication that somebody like Michael Carrick might be more conducive to keeping momentum going and this dressing room together, all pulling in the same direction, because they weren't under Ruben Amorim and they are now. And obviously that's another thing that's just worth noting, that Michael Carrick has been able to audition in practice, even without any formal interviews or conversations with the owners, because he's managing the football club. Whereas moving to a different personality, a different manager, somebody, even if they've got a great CV, that is going to be very forthright and maverick, it could work. It could be better than Michael Carrick, but you only have the proof on paper. Whereas Carrick's got the reality of qualifying for Champions League football and the reality of being a top player for Manchester United Football Club before he became a manager as well. And that's what's going to be fascinating, as to whether they make a safe bet that has the smoothest transition, in which case it will be Michael Carrick, or whether they go for a name that they haven't had a connection with but has an excellent CV, and then they just have to hope naturally that it works, because unfortunately it didn't with Ruben Amorim.
Yeah. And another topic that is being discussed lately is the replacement of Casemiro. Of course, there's a big gap to fill. And it's not even the starting of the transfer window yet, but United has been linked into like 9 or 10 names already. What is the real plan right here, Ben, in your opinion? Whether Man United will go for the, top experienced players such as Sandro Tonali and Premier League proven, or whether they want to, keep going with what they have tried to explore last summer with Baleba, keeps mentioning in multiple reports. What is the latest situations in your opinion?
Well, at least 2 senior midfielders will come in. You could make an argument for 3, because Manuel Ugarte has a question mark over his future. And first and foremost, Manchester United want 1 midfielder in, and to assess who that is and what the chemistry is with Kobbie Mainoo. And that may define the second type of profile that they go for. And this is why there's a list of so many names without much clarity at the moment. We know Manchester United definitely want a 6 or a Casemiro replacement. And then, given Casemiro has actually added a lot of goals and offensive output, do they feel that a 8 or a midfield metronome as well as a defined 6 are necessary? And that's all up for debate. But it's quite clearly 2 players behind the likes of Bruno Fernandes, Mateus Cunha, Brian Mbeumo and Mason Mount, as opposed to a number 10. Despite links with Cole Palmer, it's not really a position where Manchester United are looking to strengthen, because they signed 2 number 10s in the last summer window. The leading target is clear. It's Elliot Anderson. The challenge with Elliot Anderson is Manchester City are pushing equally as hard, and he's their top target in midfield as well. So only one of the Manchester clubs is going to win that race. Man City are quite confident on the player side, but neither club at the time we're recording has yet started talks with Nottingham Forest, who you could argue have had their strengthened position off the back of staying in the Premier League, although by not getting Champions League because they were knocked out of the Europa League, that may be a factor in clubs feeling that they can strike a deal. And we'll also have to understand with Elliot Anderson, does he want to make a decision now in May, pre-agree something, go off to the World Cup, or play the World Cup and then decide where he's going? So there's a few variables here, and Evangelos Marinakis, the Nottingham Forest owner, is not easy to negotiate with either. But the direction of travel for Elliot Anderson is either to join the blue or the red half of Manchester. And then, of course, for Manchester United, if they lose out on Elliot Anderson, you have names like Aurelien Tchouameni, who could sign a new Real Madrid deal. But if Real Madrid sign another number 6, he might be persuaded to entertain a potential exit. If Real Madrid sign an 8, I think it's more likely that Tchouameni will stay and sign a new deal at the Bernabeu, despite a recent bust-up with his teammate Valverde. And he's very high in Manchester United's thinking. Adam Wharton is a little lower down the list, because he's seen, whether rightly or wrongly, as too similar to the profile of Kobbie Mainoo. You have Edison from Atlanta. It's not true, to my understanding, that personal terms have been agreed there with the player, but he's certainly a genuine name on Manchester United's list of options. Carlos Baleba they could revisit, and they don't need to go to the player side to any great degree, because terms were agreed last summer. It's more whether they feel there's a negotiation to be had with Brighton at a number that suits the football club, because last summer Brighton were talking about Moises Caicedo type numbers for the player, and flash forwards, and he hasn't had a particularly strong or consistent season. So if Brighton's perspective is he's still 100 million or more, I think Manchester United will spend their money elsewhere. Was the price to drop, and no price has been quoted at the moment to Manchester United, maybe they decide to revisit that deal. And you also have other players like Mateus Fernandes. If West Ham go down, there's a window of opportunity there, and he's another concrete target. And the Bournemouth duo of Alex Scott and Tyler Adams. Adams has gone a little bit stale for now because he's only recently just back from injury. So Manchester United were maybe more intent on watching him in the second half of the season. He got injured, and now we have to wait and see whether they're prepared to make a move in the summer. Scott's a very hot topic for several Premier League clubs, but Bournemouth's intent is to try and get him to sign a new deal. So when you sort of spell out all of these options, you've got a blend of European players and those with Premier League experience. You've got some more established names and some younger names. You've got some more expensive names, and you've got some comparatively cheaper ones. But the long list is down to the fact that Manchester United don't just want one, they want two midfielders. And again, it's not just about picking a 1 and 2. It's probably more about getting one through the door, assessing that chemistry with that new signing and Kobbie Mainoo, then going for a second name that is not just a profile Manchester United like, but is someone they believe can complement any new signing and Mainoo, to make sure that they don't have too much overlap of profiles.
Another thing is that on the press conference after the game, Arne Slot says there will be a slight improvement in the team on Liverpool, but it's not going to be as big as last summer. One of the main positions that need to be replaced is the Mo Salah is leaving the club and Andy Robertson is leaving the club, and they haven't really properly replaced Luis Diaz, which splendidly, shining at Bayern Munich. And there's been a link to Chico Conceição, Yan Diomande. What would be the profile that is Liverpool look at in terms of replacing the legends, because it will be very essential for them next summer?
Yeah, I mean, Liverpool like a transition, so their argument would be that Milos Kerkez has come in for Andy Robertson, and then they'll have to understand whether Kostas Tsimikas is going to come back to the football club, in which case they've got more experienced cover. Yeah. Should Tsimikas depart, then they will need some form of left-back. But Milos Kerkez is effectively already the Andy Robertson replacement. And Andy Robertson, if Tottenham stay up, is expected to go there. With the wingers, it's more interesting because they, as you rightly say, need two in many ways. One, because they didn't bring in a replacement for Luis Diaz, and another for Mo Salah. And my expectation when Salah signed his new deal originally, before things turned somewhat acrimonious over a brief spell before AFCON between Arne Slot and Mo Salah, was that Liverpool would try and keep Salah until he became a free agent, as they're going to do with Virgil van Dijk. And that would give them time to look at the right side, and it would be a left-sided attacker that was maybe more pressing. Now it's the other way around, because when Hugo Ekitike is fit, he can filter out to that left-hand side. So Liverpool have to decide what they want to do. Finding a Salah heir is arguably the top priority. Adding another winger on the left-hand side, or a more creative-minded attacker capable of playing both centrally and on the left-hand side, is another profile on Liverpool's agenda. And it's kind of just whether they split it into two wingers and a central attacker, whether an attacking midfielder, a number 8, a number 10, a second striker who can even play as a lead 9. Because don't forget, Federico Chiesa could go, Alexis McAllister's got a question mark over his head as well. So there's going to be a lot of upheaval of versatile players at Liverpool capable of playing in more than one position. And this is why Liverpool are expected to have a very significant summer, as they did 12 months ago. Yan Diomande is a player they really like and is capable of playing on the right or the left. two things are worth considering here. Number one is whether he signs a new deal at Leipzig and doesn't move until summer 2027. And number two is price. And Leipzig at the moment are sticking to 100 million euros because they feel Liverpool are going to be there. Bayern might be there if they don't get Anthony Gordon, even though the Newcastle attacker is their priority. PSG are very interested in Diamande, and that might open the door for Bradley Barcola and a potential exit. And if that's the case, Liverpool could explore that profile as well. So there's a fair amount of overlap. Manchester United are looking for predominantly a left-sided winger. Diamande is one of their targets. But again, does Diamande prefer to join a club that can offer him week in, week out game time over on the right-hand side? And this is what I think makes the market for wingers particularly complex and fascinating, because there's so many clubs looking. Arsenal want a left winger, Man United want a left winger, Liverpool want a left and a right winger, or someone capable of playing on both sides. PSG are happy with their front line, but if Barcola goes, they'll be looking for some form of wide attacker as well. Aston Villa are expected to lose Morgan Rogers. They'll be looking for a wide player. Chelsea are still looking for somebody most likely central or on the left-hand side, even though over on the left-hand side they've got Alejandro Garnacho, they've got Jamie Gittins, but nonetheless, adding another creative-minded attacker for them is really important. And you would think if Newcastle, as expected, lose Anthony Gordon to someone, they're going to be in the market for a left-sided attacker too. So this is going to be the summer of managers moving, left wingers moving, and midfielders moving. And strap in, because we're going to get some high-profile transfers coming up, and Liverpool are going to be one of the busiest Premier League clubs.
Right. Thank you so much, Ben. It's very, very, very enlightening sessions with you. And we really hope we can have another sessions in the future. And it's going to be very busy summer for you. And we wish you a very good luck. Thank you for your time, Ben.
No, thank you. And thanks for everyone for watching in Jakarta. Have a good summer, everyone. Enjoy the World Cup and look forward to coming on again soon.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks. Take care.
Ya, itu dia tadi beberapa episode hari ini tentang update transfer di seputar seluruh market yang ada di Eropa bersama Ben Jacobs juga. Semoga kalian cukup happy dengan apa yang kita sampaikan, dan tentunya kawan-kawan, gue ingin mengundang kalian untuk jangan lupa bergabung ke Discord kita. Di sana ada banyak sekali aktivasi yang bisa kalian ikuti. Nanti kalau misalnya di Piala Dunia mau ikutan, telepon-teleponan dapat hadiah dan lain sebagainya, bisa kalian partisipasinya ada di Discord. Atau mau ikutan community clipper ya, dapat penghasilan cuan dari ngeklip FMS, itu juga bisa di Discord. Oke? Dan gue juga ingin mengimbau untuk para non-member tetap mensupport Football Morning Show dengan cara kalian subscribe ya. Ini udah deket nih, udah mau 147.000, tolonglah disupport biar 150.000 cepet ya. Dan diklik juga tombol likes dan tombol hype-nya disimpan seminggu 2 kali lah buat FMS. Jadi kita tetap bisa muncul di home, karena kemarin sempat kena shadow ban ya pasca FMS Ramadan gitu kawan-kawan. Oke, gue doakan kalian semua yang sedang dalam perjalanan ke kantor tetap dalam semangat positif, yang kena macet, yang lagi dempet-dempetan di KRL tetap semangat kawan-kawan. Pagi ini kalau kalian agak ini habis sambil nonton FMS diseruput dulu sedikit. Oke, itu dia kawan-kawan. Seperti biasa tetap semangat positif, and as always my friends, have a lovely day.